In 2012, I, a 20-year-old female, went with my boyfriend to a diner on a Wednesday night. This place advertised free pie Wednesday when you spend X amount of dollars. The restaurant was right by his apartment, literally less than a 5-minute drive. It was a rainy night and the restaurant was in a southern college town, but not close enough to campus to get much of a late-night crowd, and definitely not in the rain. Both of us enjoy quiet places, so we spontaneously decided to give it a try. The place was a normal, bland-looking chain restaurant shaped like a U. From one end of the restaurant, it would be impossible to see what was going on the other end. It's around 9 p.m. Not all restaurants are going to be open past then, but diners like this often are. The Waffle House and Denny's near campus is usually pretty hopping late into the night. This place was empty except one bubbly female staff member. I'd been in food service and I asked the waitress what time they close, because I hate when people come in right at closing time. She says that they're open at midnight. Lucky us. Our waitress was a skinny, petite, maybe 30-year-old woman who sat us away from the front. She introduced herself as Sally, and right away I got the distinct feeling she was lying about her name. It's the way that she took a moment to smile after she had said it. It reminded me of the way my sister, who was a certified pathological liar, would slip in a little lie. Something was a little off, but nothing alarming. I mean, my sister is completely harmless. I noticed Sally isn't wearing a name tag, just jeans and a polo shirt. She gives us menus and again says that her name is Sally. And again, I'm picking up on those subtle body language cues that I learned from living with a habitual liar. So I'm thinking Sally is full of crap. It stands out in my memory as my first impression. The second impression was, damn, this lady talks a lot. I haven't seen you before. Are you new? Are you here for college? I had great roommates in college. Do you have any roommates? Aren't Thursdays the worst? There's nothing to do. Do you have any plans for later? It was kind of annoying, but she seemed nice and we figured she was probably just bored out of her mind and or making an effort to get tips for being friendly. It became clear that we were the only guys, and there weren't even other food servers for her to talk to. As far as I could see, it was just the three of us. We didn't want to be rude, so we just answered her obnoxious questions, thinking it was an attempt for small talk. After our main dinner, she took our order for pie and then started chatting up about the weather. It's so dangerous to drive in the rain, blah blah blah. It should blow over soon, but I would wait here if I were you. I started to get a bit creeped out. Like, why was she being so clingy? It wasn't necessarily a feeling of being in danger. More like, why are you so obsessed with me? So, I get creeped out but then feel bad for it. Who do I think I am, Regina George hating on some nerd? The lady probably just really needs to bring home some tip money. She brings us 2 slices of pie and gives us some peas. The pie was gross. It had a mixed berry and it tasted super fake sweet. Very artificial, like a child's lip gloss flavor. I don't know why I ate more than 1 bite, other than I was broke and never wasted food. After a few crunchy bites, I look to the back of the diner and the waitress is standing near our back door, staring at us with some man. Heavy-set, pale skin, sweat-stained white shirt, a huge barrel of a man, with a facial expression like he was watching cockroaches that he was about to step on. They were both just staring silently. My blood went cold. All the hairs on my neck went up. They saw that I was looking at them and they went into the kitchen quickly. Finally, alarm bells in my brain are ringing like a freaking tornado siren. I whispered, "We need to leave now. Just sneak out and go." My boyfriend could see that I was freaked. He threw down some cash with a big tip, grabbed our jackets and left our gross half-eaten pie, and we bolted. We drive home and start laughing at our overreaction. That man was probably just a cranky cook who wanted us to go so he could chill. And that waitress was just fishing for tips. Man, boy, did she look out. She got well over a 50% tip, because I was too chicken to wait for change. I'm feeling silly and really rude for judging a book by its cover, and running out on the nice lady like that. And then the night went from kind of creepy to actual horror. I remember laughing in the car, and then I was waking up shivering and shaking in our dark apartment. My boyfriend was laying on top of the bed, fully dressed with his shoes on. I had been slumped over, half on the bed, half on the floor, also dressed in my rain-soaked jeans and boots. But I think I had my jacket off. It was midnight. I didn't remember parking, or unlocking the door, walking inside or anything from the last 2 hours. I wake my boyfriend up in a panic. He remembers coming back, but not too clearly. He says that he remembers going to the bathroom and becoming super disoriented, like the room was spinning but feeling a strange calm. And then nothing. We had both blacked out, something neither of us experienced before or after. We didn't have a drop of alcohol, or intentionally do any drugs. Holy balls, are we lucky that we live so close. Literally a 3-minute drive away. If we passed out like that on the road, who knows what would have happened if we had stayed at the restaurant for even 3 more minutes. This was almost 10 years ago, and I remember calling the non-emergency police line about it in the morning after I had calmed down a little. The person that I talked to on the phone sounded like they didn't believe me and questioned if I was partying. I wasn't, and generally had the tone that I was wasting their time. It was a frustrating phone call where the police person asked, "Well, what do you want me to do?" I don't remember my response. It was awful. Probably worse than the feeling of violation from that night was the attitude of annoyance and dismissal from the authorities. Later, I looked up the restaurant online, and the hours are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Just a little extra spice to the WTF soup and further confirmation that something definitely wasn't right from the get-go. What sober person passes out like that, slumped over the edge of the bed in cold rain-soaked clothing? 2 sober people with no history of fainting just collapse for no reason. I think we've all been told never to leave your drink alone if you go out to a bar or a party. It never occurred to me that same danger could come from a chatty waitress in a chain restaurant. I was at 9 or 10, and this was back in the early 90s when latchkey kids were fine and no one blinked an eye. I was home alone and decided to walk to my local Blockbuster, maybe a 30-minute there and back. I had done it before on my bike and wasn't worried or scared. I took off and got about halfway down my block when all the craziness had started. A side note, unbeknownst to me, my neighbor's son was a drunk or a drug addict, or something was wrong with him. My parents evidently knew but didn't tell me because he has moved out a while back, I guess. All of a sudden, here comes a cherry picker roaring down the street, going super fast. I remember because several other cars passed and this one made me jump and look up. There was a man shirtless in the top of the cherry picker hollering stuff like, "Oh yeah, woo!" and your basic drunken BS. I immediately felt uncomfortable, and before I could decide what I wanted to do, he saw me. He yelled something out at me and threw a beer bottle down. That freaked me out, and I immediately decided this trip was over and that I was going back home. I turned around and started back towards my house, but nervously decided to start heading into people's yards to make it look like I was going into a different house. That didn't help at all. He was already heading toward me. The driver was now slapping his hand on the truck door, obviously drunk as well. They were yelling out to me with garbage like, "Hey little girl, where are you going?" I ducked behind a house and saw a large pine tree between the 2 yards, so I jetted out and ducked behind it to see if they were still following me. To my absolute terror, the guy in the bucket goes, I see you hiding behind that tree, little girl. At that point, I lost it. I ran as fast as I could in a sheer panic to my house, backyard, and I ran in locking it behind me. I ran and checked the other locks and went into my parents' master bathroom and crawled into the shower and put a towel over me. I was sobbing. I called my mom and dad, who told me to hang up and call 911. I did, and they asked me if I was hidden, which was so terrifying. Nothing happened after that. The cops arrived right after my parents had pulled in and acted like they had been home. I roll, but they're good people. The cops actually found the men, and they were arrested and charged with my stuff, along with many other things they had evidently been up to that day. I wasn't the only one that they had harassed in our neighborhood, but I was the only child. And of course, it was our neighbor's drunken, disorderly son. I'm 5'3", 115 pounds, so I guess I'm pretty small. That's my reasoning for being very submissive over all of this. This is a lengthy story, so I'm just going to skim, and I'm not the best at telling the story, so prepare yourself. When I started working at this fast food chain, I was 16. It was my first job, and I was excited to finally take my first steps into adulthood. This coworker of mine was training me. For privacy purposes, I'll call him Frank. Frank at first glance looks young, 19, 21 at the most. We got along and nothing was too bad nor alarming, like conversations about anime and such. I remember things started to change slightly when he was talking about a video game character, and none of our coworkers knew who it was. When I saw the green hat character, I said, "Oh, that's Link. How cute. I used to watch my brother play Legend of Zelda: Four Swords." He looked at me and said, "Marry me." I laughed it off and continued on with my day. For the rest of my shift, he would hover over me asking me personal questions like my age, my favorite things, and etc. Being the open, friendly person I was, I answered happily. I told him how I loved butterflies and that I was 16. I'm 17 now and have had several jobs since then. When an older man asks you for your age as a minor, it's never a nice sign. Moving on to December, I've been at this chain for a month now. My manager asked me if I wanted to come to their company Secret Santa party, and I agreed. When the day came, I arrived with my now ex-best friend. Frank arrives on the phone, acting busy and such, but I thought nothing of it. During the whole party, he was on the phone. I was getting food when he tapped my shoulder, still on the phone, and handed me a beautifully butterfly necklace. I didn't know what to say, besides thanking him, thinking he was my Secret Santa. And then later, my other coworker comes up to me, handing me a gift card to Starbucks and a plush. I asked why, and she said that she was my Secret Santa. I thought that it must have been a mistake and went on with my night listening to my old best friend tell me how I should date Frank, which in my mind was never on the table. January rolls around and it was Frank's birthday. We were just working until I heard one of my girl coworkers, who was into him at the time, wish him a happy birthday. Being that person, I wish him happy birthday while my other coworker asks how old he's turning. He said 27. Might I add that every shift I worked with him, he would take several photos of me before and after my shift, commenting about my hair, my skin, and my eyes. He often said how cute my nose was. Again, not wanting to cause a scene, I just laugh everything off. And that's always the case, isn't it? We don't want to cause a scene. I did start telling him to please stop, but of course, he wouldn't, no matter how many times I asked him to. Now, I'm going to skip to May, my birthday month, and of course, I was working on my birthday. I went to the back door as usual. Due to everything going on, I had to ring a doorbell and wait for someone to open the door. Out of nowhere, Frank pops out of the bushes handing me all kinds of gifts. Today was his day off too, so I was confused. I remember thinking, how the hell did he know my birthday? I never talked to him about it since I don't like celebrating it. He followed me around for a few minutes before awkwardly leaving when I apologized that I wanted to get to work and not get yelled at. In July was when I finally found a new job. I quit due to sexual harassment that I had to endure for the 9 months I worked there from my shift lead. That's a whole other story, but when a man starts getting handsy, don't laugh it off and shut that down. It got really bad when that ex-best friend that I had mentioned earlier started showing all my coworkers, including Frank, and that shift lead, explicit photos of me that she stole off my phone without me knowing. I was very insecure at the time and was in an abusive relationship, so I would give anything this boy had asked of me. Anyways, at that point, I had about had it. After being interrogated about that shift lead, I put in my 2 weeks. On my last week, everyone was talking about how that shift lead got laid off for sexual harassment. Frank and I were doing dishes and the topic came up. I awkwardly told him about it, now knowing how everyone knew my story. The shift lead would often grab my butt, rub my thigh, talk about my boobs about, only if they were bigger, things he would do to my body, etc. I would say stop politely, but he would continue. When I started yelling and saying stop more assertively, he would often make me do humiliating tasks like cleaning the greasy floors with my hands and knees, or cleaning the dining room when it was closed due to the virus. And when I told Frank this, he shrugged it off and said that there was no reason for him to be fired. I remember being absolutely shocked, retorting, "I'm just glad that I'm leaving this hellhole," and I left it at that. A month into my new job as a hostess, everything was going well. It's a restaurant, but everyone just comes there to drink, so it's more of a bar. On one of my 2 a.m. shifts, Frank stops by on his bike. I tried to be friendly, but I was getting frustrated when he kept cutting me off from talking to other people. I then walked away to bus tables because no one else would do it, and he couldn't follow me into the restaurant. There was only outdoor seating, of course. After bussing all the tables, I come up to the counter to see my coworkers giggling. "What's happening?" I asked. The other hostess smiled. "That's so cute how your boyfriend takes photos of you while you're working. That's so cute how obsessive he is over you. He wouldn't stop talking about you to us." Boyfriend. I was and still happily remained single after all that bullcrap of a relationship. The only person that they could be referring to was Frank. And then it dawned on me. How the hell did he know where I was working and my shift schedule? I didn't tell anyone besides my parents and my brother. A week goes by and Frank comes back. I may have gotten a little overdramatic, but I didn't know what else to do. I told the other host at the counter to tell him I'm not working today, and I dashed inside. I told my manager that this man, Frank, keeps taking photos of me as I'm working, and it's making me uncomfortable. My manager told me to stay in the back room while he went and handled the situation. Our restaurant is very popular in the area, so it's very crowded in the front. Frank with his bike would block customers, and that's what my manager was telling him. My idiotic ass was popping my head up a little under that back room window where I could see what was going on in front. I freak out a little when I see Frank get aggressive with my manager. He begins thrashing when my manager tries to lead him out of the front. Suddenly, Frank throws his bike and tries heading into the building. A few male waiters see what's happening and were informed by my manager. I remember one waiter standing in the background with me watching the door, as another was practically fighting with Frank. I could only hear yelling outside the door and then it went quiet. I spent the rest of the shift like that, cleaning silverware with that male server. From then on, people would walk me to my car even if it was in broad daylight. From August to November, he would be on his bike passing by the restaurant from a distance. He would just be watching and taking photos for 10 to 20 minutes before leaving. Now, the reason I thought of putting this here was it's been a little more intense besides just the looking from a distance. Due to the virus, I'm not needed anymore because now my restaurant is takeout only. I've been working seasonal jobs or working at the restaurant, but now I'm not working, waiting to get my schedule. Because I was bored this day, I drove to my local mall just to do some Christmas shopping. While driving, I look in the rearview mirror to see a recognizable face. It was Frank. I practically choke on spit seeing his face in my mirror. I try not to get the best of myself and knock it off as a coincidence. It wasn't. He followed me throughout the mall and then later followed me as I was driving home. No one knows where I live besides that old friend, and I would like to keep it at that. So I drove for an hour, getting lost and taking every random turn I could until I lost him. I now believe this is how he would track me down. My car isn't common, but it doesn't stand out too much. I've rarely left my house since. It's January 2021, and ever since the start of this new year, I've been getting phone calls going like, "Hello?" Somebody breathing into the phone like a creep. "Hello?" And the call ends. Along with that, I've gotten many random messages about asking about gifts and delivering me a gift. I'm not one who usually uses social media, but these messages were all over mine. All of them were from newly made accounts across Snapchat and Instagram. On one occasion, an account started sending me photos that I never sent to anyone. These photos were photos of my cat and that I had saved in my Snapchat account. Just photo after photo of things I've never sent, and ending with, "I have a gift for you." I deleted both apps along with deleting almost everything off my phone. A week ago, I downloaded Snapchat again due to some dumb assignments my teacher wanted us to do with that crap social media app. One of my old coworkers sent me a message and I opened it. "Frank wants to give you your Christmas gift. You want to stop by?" Maybe I'm just overreacting, or maybe those accounts were Frank. I just want to say that my personality has changed because of all of this. I'm very protective now. I rarely talk to anyone. Not as friendly as I was then. It's only been a little over a year yet. I feel like I've aged more than 10. I just want to say, Frank, I don't want your Christmas gift.